Hello and welcome to the Make Things Better podcast. Today I'm joined by Molly Gould. Welcome on the show, Molly. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. And we met through the Better Business Network.
We did. I am a big fan of the Better Business Network.
How long have you been in it?
Oh, I want to say it must be 18 months, maybe coming up for 2 years.
Really?
Quite a while, yeah.
Yeah, that is a while. We've literally been in it a few weeks and I've already had the opportunity to meet so many cool people.
Yeah.
I love it. It's just great. It's just nice, friendly, normal people. So yeah.
You should send that to Hannah. That can be the tagline. Nice, friendly, normal people.
She's literally someone's gonna snip that and that'll be in their marketing somewhere, won't it?
Absolutely.
They smash their marketing. I love it. But yeah, do you want to start off by introducing yourself, a bit about what you do and how you got into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Molly. I run a business called Effable. It's a B-Corp and really supports businesses in their brand knowing, brand voice and their storytelling as well. So helping them communicate their message in a way that feels authentic and rooted in their truth as a brand.
What is brand knowing?
Oh, so I'm actually really excited about this. So it's signature to Effable. So brand knowing is where brand voice, brand story and brand truth come together. So it's a combination of the things that make up a brand. So it is the purpose, mission, the vision, the values, those foundations that really shape where a brand goes from there. The story, so who is that character, that hero of their story? I think brands often think that they're the hero and they're the main character, and it's not necessarily about that. It's about thinking a bit outside the box there, and then the brand voice is such a big part of that. But those sort of three elements coming together through brand knowing, it's a feeling that a brand gets to have, and then the people working for the brand as well. It's being sure of what they stand for, sure of how they communicate, and sure about the words that they're going to use to do that. So yeah, it's quite new. I think that's the first time I've said it out loud actually, so this is quite exciting.
Wow, that is exciting. Yeah, I haven't heard of it before, but I noticed it on your website and it piqued my curiosity. So you said sometimes a brand can maybe think they're the hero, but sometimes it's a little bit different to that. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all guilty of it, aren't we? Humans are self-centered beings. We are by nature. And, behind every brand is a human team making that come to life. So it can be very easy to fall into the trap of putting the brand at the centre of the story. We do this, we do that, instead of focusing on the impact that it has. So the thing or person at the centre of that story, it could be their customer, it could be nature. There's lots of different avenues, I guess, to explore with that. And it really helps brands to communicate in a more effective way when they start thinking about the other entities outside of their little sphere, their little brand world.
Yeah, so it's more about the impact that they're having on the world than just who they are in a way.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Which it's hard, isn't it? Because it's easy to fall into that of the day to day. We need to do this. We need to launch that. We need to talk about this. And I don't know. I'm inspired by nature a lot anyway, and I love absolutely nothing more than going to the beach and staring out at the sea and realizing how tiny and insignificant we all are. I think it's so freeing. So when we're getting caught up in that, this needs doing, that needs doing, the brand stands for this, the brand stands for that, and it's pausing and it's okay, who's this really about? Who's this at the centre of this story?
Yeah, and I love that because I think it is easy to get caught up in the day by day and sort of just thinking about the next task that you're working on. But it is so important to think, well, what's the purpose behind this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I found some amazing moments when I'm just, it doesn't happen that often, but sometimes I just look up at the stars and I'm
yes.
It doesn't, it's not that deep,
Literally, none of it really matters. Yeah. I think if we're all just doing the best that we can, we're like little ants, aren't we, on this spinning little planet, and the things that we worry and stress about, as long as we're being good people and doing our best and translating that into what we're putting out into the world as well, that's that's all we can do, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get into branding?
By accident, by total accident. So I was really, really, really lucky that my first proper full-time job was in radio. So I failed all of my A-levels, which was a shock. I thought I was going to pass them all, and I failed them all. This is obviously a long time ago now. It's quite some time ago. And I thought my life was over. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, that's it. Oh my, and you're like, oh, how silly I was, how silly and naive. And I saw that there was a B-Tech in radio production. And I was like, okay, I like radio. That sounds cool. So I went and did that instead. And part of it was a day's spent at the local radio station. And from the first moment, I just fell in love with it. I was like, oh my gosh, how cool would this be as a job? And I remember it was a breakfast show presenter at the time, actually, Perry Spiller. He said to me, he was like, make yourself indispensable. And that is the best piece of advice anyone has ever given me, because I was like, I am going to make myself so useful around here that they have to employ me. And they did. So I started out as an assistant radio producer, and then started working in different teams, in the promotions team. Went out to Florida to produce a show there that we did, which was really, really cool. And then it was working in the promotions team. Like, people started asking me to write promotional scripts, and I'd always loved writing. Like, my absolute dream would have been to be a writer when I was little. So I started writing these scripts, and I was like, I quite like this. And stayed there for 6 years, then went to a media agency in Manchester, then ended up at a PR agency in Stafford. And it occurred to me that I could do all the creative things that I loved in radio, but write. And I was like, oh my gosh, people would pay me for this. And yeah, that's kind of how I fell into it, really. And that is some time ago now.
Wow. So you start off, make yourself indispensable.
Yeah.
So that was about what, like, just trying to provide as much value to this company so that they didn't want to let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, so I'd agreed to be assistant producer on The Breakfast Show, which didn't pay any money at the time, but I was like, you know what, I'm in college, it's fine. And I remember the producer saying to me, can you edit this bit of audio? And without thinking, I was just like, yeah, absolutely. I'd never done it in my life. And I was like, well, it's time to learn how to edit audio. And yeah, it was just about being as useful as I could be and providing as much value and making people's lives easier. Yeah, and they did employ me.
Amazing. And do you think that kind of helped you get onto the path towards being more creative? Because, like, you had a certain skill set, and then eventually you fell into doing some more writing in radio. And then you learned, oh, okay, I really love this. Or maybe you just connected back to really loving it, because it sounds like you've always had that sort of passion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was purely that I didn't realise, and at the risk of sounding 100, because I'm not 100, but the world's very different now, that I feel like young people probably know these creative jobs exist a little bit more. But I didn't know that I could get paid to write things. Like, I thought, like, oh, if I'm a writer for a living, I'll, be writing novels, and that's quite hard to get into. So it never really occurred to me that could be a job path. Like, at school, they didn't really talk about, like, these creative avenues. It was like, oh, it's a bit arty, that won't work. Whereas I feel like now it's probably a bit more well known.
Yeah. So how did that, like, opportunity to start writing come up?
It was purely through, it was part of my job that I had to write promotional scripts, so I was writing them. And then I had a very brief stint in the sales team, because I thought that was a good idea. And they moved me, bless them. They were like, yeah, of course you can do sales. And they gave me, like, good clients. Like, they gave me Alton Towers as a client. It was amazing. And then I was like, it was about a weekend, and I was like, I literally hate this. So I was working with some clients. I remember going around to... they had, like, a car repair centre locally, and I went round to her house, like the client's house, and we were sat in her kitchen, and she was like, can you just write the script? And I was like, yeah, I can write the script. And it was just through like little bits like that of probably doing things I shouldn't have been doing, I'm going to say, is how I fell into it. And then made it so that it was the thing I should have been doing.
Oh, I love that. I think it's so interesting because it's like you're just trying out like different things, and then eventually you end up kind of stumbling upon something and you're like, okay, I like this, you know, I want to do more of this.
Yeah.
How did you like transition then? So you were working in like a few other agencies as well, and then eventually you transitioned into going on your own. Like, how was that sort of, that transition?
The best thing I've ever done, but also quite difficult. So I was working at the PR agency and I thought, I adore this. I adore telling these stories, but I don't necessarily like the clients that I'm doing it for. Like, how cool would it be if I could do it for clients and brands that I actually like really deeply believe in, and feel connected to as well. Like, I'd say I'm quite a spiritual person, I'm going to say. Like, I believe a lot in energy and like how we connect with things. So I was like, if I felt energetically aligned with these clients, this would be magic. So I took a job closer to home as a content manager, and I sort of gave myself a year, and then COVID happened and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't leave a job now. So I stuck it out a little bit longer, but then it just got to the point where like the desire to do it was too big, and I was like, it's now or never.
Amazing.
And I jumped.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow. You talked a bit about energy there and like writing. I was reading some of your things today, like on LinkedIn and your website, and it was cool because I've got to say, this is even before I read something about energy in one of your posts, but I was kind of feeling like, wow, like I don't know, I was like just sensing some crazy energy from the writing. Like, that sounds weird, and I've never really thought about writing in this way before, but it was kind of like something was just being transferred into my mind, like some kind of ideas through what you were writing. It was like really cool, and I was like, wow, the power of words is big, you know, and you could really get that across. Like, you seem to have like some way with words. Like, how do you kind of connect? I don't want to just like stroke your ego too much, but
I don't like that. I'll come here again.
But yeah, honestly, like, I do mean it when I say that. Like, how do you kind of tap into that writing flow? Like, how does that come about?
Well, thank you, first of all. I think it's different for everyone, but for me, writing is such a cathartic practice. Like, even from a work sense, like, it brings me so much joy, and I think the intention that you put into that really does shine through. And I mean, I do it for the writing I do for Effable, and I do it with clients as well, that like I typically meditate before I start writing something. You know, I've got a selenite stick in my office and sage, and like I cleanse the energy to make sure that what I'm creating and what I'm writing and what I'm putting out there is charged with the correct energy to start with. Because say if I have been driving, I've written my car off. That was such a rubbish analogy, as I'm carless at the moment. But say I'm driving and someone's cut me up and like my energy's a little bit out of whack and I'm like feeling like flustered. If I then go into my office and sit down and immediately jump into a project, that stagnant, pent up, you know, there might be anger, there might be frustration, there's going to be things there that I don't want in that writing, and the client definitely doesn't want in the writing, because it comes through not only in the words that you use, but in the tone of voice as well. And I think, I don't know, I feel like it's probably a bit more commonly talked about now, but the power of brand voice and like how you construct those words and how you put them together is arguably more important than the actual words and what you're saying, because that intention, and people can feel the energy. Like, if I read something, I know if somebody's been like really peed off when they've written it, or whether they've rushed it, or whether they've written it out of feeling obliged to as well. If someone's chucked them something and gone, here you go, write this, stick it up, you can tell that there's not necessarily love in it, love and care. So it's a huge thing for me, and there's like, I've got so many practices in my little toolbox that I come back to make sure that my energy is where it needs to be, both for Effable and for clients.
Wow, that's quite mad, because it's like, instead of the approach of just kind of thinking, right, I've got to write this, I'm going to try write it in this way, or I'm going to do it at this time, or anything like that. It's like you're starting off with, right, how am I feeling? How's my energy right now? And then you kind of have that open space to then go and be creative, and it's going to come out in your writing, because you can tell. Like, I had no idea that you meditated before, or what was the other thing you said? I've never even heard of whatever the other thing was.
So it's a crystal, so it's a selenite stick, so that typically like a white colour. And you can get huge ones, but like this one's quite little. And yeah, you can just you can hold it and set an intention with it, and it's a cleansing crystal. And then sage as well, so like saging the room. If anyone comes in, it's like being like a smoky room with all my incense going, and the sage people are like, ooh, fighting through the mist to get through to me.
No way. I didn't think we'd get onto that today, but that's so interesting. I love it though, because it's so interesting to like hear how it actually is for you. Like, how are those words coming out? And like, that is kind of what I was intrigued and curious to know, is how do you get into that state? And yeah, it sounds like this is definitely working for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken me such a long time to get to this point where, so I'm a yoga teacher as well. I don't currently teach, but I did a yoga teacher training, and I'll probably do another one as well, because how it's impacted my work has been incredible, which is crazy because you don't really think the two are interlinked, but it's had such a profound impact. And also, I think when you're working for other people, you subscribe to a certain way of working, and I think working in agencies, like radio was an agency, in a certain kind of way, and then the agencies that followed, you kind of pick up their working practices and think like, oh well, this is how it's done, or this is how it's always been done. So to break that down and go, actually, this is how I work best, these are the things that I believe in, these are the creative practices that I want to use in order to tap into that. It's been challenging because I felt silly along the way. I mean, I don't feel silly now. Like, I very rarely feel silly. But yeah, it's been really exciting and empowering to try that. And I really try, and obviously it depends which client I'm working with, but it's getting more and more to a point now where it's like, well, this is the way I work. Client, you will work with me on this as well. So that involves like meditations on calls to make sure that like everybody's in like a grounded state before we start talking about anything, because if they've just been like, their bosses had a go at them, or they're stressing about something, their attention and their energy isn't going to be on what we're discussing. So bringing that down, having that like grounded energy before we start is so important, and it makes such a difference as well.
Yeah, you already used the word, so I'm just going to have to steal it. But I was going to say, it just sounds like so empowering that you're just kind of like setting the tone, like you're setting your life up in the way that you want to set it up. And then what you're going to do through that is attract the people who align with your values. And like, as you say,
absolutely,
like you're a B-Corp, and like you're just going to be attracting like people who want to do good things in the world. I want to get that across in their branding. So everything just sounds so aligned, which I love.
Yeah, it feels it. And as I say, like, it hasn't always been like that. Like, it's I think it's an ever evolving journey, isn't it? And there's still things that I want to do, things I want to change, but yeah, how it is at the minute I'm really happy with, and yeah, it feels very much in alignment with how I want to do things, which is nice. It's a nice feeling.
I actually think like in the future, and this is just me kind of hypothesizing, but I reckon in like 10, 20 years, maybe even sooner actually, a lot of companies and a lot of people in the workplace will be focusing on kind of tapping into the right energy and having more practices that result in greater productivity. Because I think nowadays there's a lot of people who are not actually as productive as they possibly could be, because maybe they're doing jobs which don't align with their values that much, or they don't really enjoy it that much. I'd like to think at our company, Hive, everyone's very, very aligned, because our purpose is to essentially make things better in the world. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's like,
definitely get on board with that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in our company would be like, I don't want to make things better,
I disagree.
I want to just make things worse. Can we just like go destroy some stuff? But yeah, I think there's like a lot of people out there who probably aren't really not enjoying like loving their job as much, and I think there is going to be like more of a shift. And I don't know, what do you think?
Definitely, and I think that's one of the great things about B Corp for one. I mean, I will caveat that with, you know, B Corp, lots of pros and cons. Obviously, I went through the process. I see the value in it, but, you know, we are aware that there are some challenges with the process.
How was the process, by the way? Because I've heard it's
so
quite
long.
Yeah, I've heard.
I was really cocky. I was so cocky. I was like, I'm one full-time person in the company. I work with some freelancers as well, but at the minute I'm the only like member of staff. It'll be easy, like service-based business, no like, you know, suppliers to consider. Because for some companies, it's, I'm trying to use like a nice word for it, but it's a faff. It's a faff for some companies. So I was like, yeah, I'll just do it myself. If anyone could take anything from this, it would be, if you're going through the B Corp process, get help. Seek assistance, because it's hard. And even things like, I was answering like the questions in the BIA at like 11 o'clock at night, because obviously it's on top of your day job, it's on top of everything else. You wear enough hats anyway in a business. And yeah, like, an incredible thing to have done, and I'm very, very proud that Effable is a B Corp, but definitely when I recertify in a few years, I'll get a B leader to help me, because yeah, it
sounds difficult.
It gave me some grey hairs.
Yeah, no, it does sound really difficult. We've been trying to become B Corp in the sense of looking into it, and we kind of know what we need to do, but it's just like going and like finding all the information.
That's the thing. It's like, honestly, like the evidence that you have to gather. Oh yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted, but absolutely worth it. Like hands down worth it.
What are like the benefits to Effable?
I think the main thing for me is that logo, that B. If you know what it is, you know what it is. And it's really hard to say, and I have this with clients as well, it's really hard to say, we're a business that cares, we're a business that does the right thing, because actions speak so much louder than words in that sense. And it's like, if you have to tell people, it's like, you know, and it's like, if people are like, I'm a really nice person, it's like, if you have to say it. Oh.
Questionable, yeah.
So I think having that, it's like a stamp of approval that, you know, I went into Bird and Blend in town earlier just to get some tea, and like they're a B Corp, and it's like that little like, I know what you stand for, I know you're a good egg. I mean, I know there's some, you know, just because you're a B Corp doesn't mean you do business well, I will say that. And I'm currently writing quite a long piece on that, because I mean it's so recording this in March, so it's B Corp month throughout March. And, you know, yes, there's lots of celebration and things going on, but I think there is a very fine line. Maybe we should call it bee washing instead of green washing.
Ooh, I like that.
Oh, remind me of that. I'll forget.
Yeah.
I'll literally forget that in the next 3 seconds. I'm like a goldfish. But yeah, there's just, you know, other things to consider. But definitely an incredible thing to have done. And yeah, it's definitely that stamp of approval that people and planet before profit, you know, it's like the unspoken sort of like a little sup nod between businesses, I think. So yeah, I'm a fan of it.
Have you learned anything about like the process, or have you got any like tips for anyone?
Tips. I think a lot of people will log into, so the BIA is free to do. So if you're a business who is here to do good in the world and make it nice and not more rubbish, I was going to swear, I won't swear. It's absolutely worth doing. Like, even if you've got no intention of becoming a B Corp, it's a really good framework to work through and see where you could improve. And it's quite thought-provoking in ways as well. Like, this, the amount of questions you get depends on the size of your business, the type of business. So, you know, the questions I got would be very different from Hive probably, because of the type of sector you work in. But I think it's just a really good sort of, gives you a good grounding on like, okay, where am I at as a business? What could we improve on? Like, what sort of things would help the world and help people? I mean, I know there's lots of frameworks out there, you know, there's IBMs, SDGs, there's flipping loads of them in there, and it's like, which one do I choose? So I think, you know, if you're looking for something that'll give you an idea of what sort of business you are and like where you could improve, and perhaps give you some food for thought for maybe the next 3 to 5 years of how you want to grow and how you want to do business, then it's really great, and that's free to access. Yeah,
makes sense. Do you find like you tend to work with other B-Corps?
I absolutely do, yeah. However, when I got the notification that Affable had certified as a B-Corp, I was like, maybe we should only work with other B-Corps. And then that was very quickly like debunked in my own head, because it's an amazing community. It's so amazing. It's so supportive, and I adore working with other B-Corps, and that'll always be the case. But if B-Corps only work with B-Corps, that's a massive echo chamber. It's like you're preaching to the choir, isn't it? It's like, yeah, people on planet over profit, and we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, which is great. But what about the difficult conversations that need to happen? And like, I absolutely love working with businesses where I get to question things, and I'm like, why'd you do it like that? What about this? Why is that team like that? Again, getting involved in things I absolutely shouldn't be involved in. Why change the habit of a lifetime?
What sort of response do you get when you like sort of question things like that?
Generally positive, because one thing that I really don't do is, can I use one swear word? A light swear word?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't work with people who are knobs. Absolutely won't do it. It's such a drain on my energy that I can't bear it. So if anyone shows any signs of any point of being that way inclined, then, you know, it's not for me.
What would you say is the importance of branding and storytelling, in particular for purpose-driven businesses?
I think it's the thing that stands you apart from other people. And I know you mentioned this briefly when we were chatting on Slack ahead of this, that there's so many brands out there who aren't doing the right thing, sadly. I mean, we'll sit here and we'll be like, oh my gosh, how could you operate like that? But people do, and brands do, and they're taking up airtime, they're taking up space, they're taking, you know, market share. So if we can have more of the purpose-driven, you know, the heart-led, you know, the businesses and brands that are really here to shift things, to literally change the world, they're here to shake things up. We want them to be telling stories, and we want them to be telling them well as well, because that's the way that they're going to take. People will always buy things, you know, certain services will always exist. So if we can take that money and put it into the pockets and hands of people who are here to do good in the world, that's absolutely what we want. And storytelling is absolutely key to that, because it's how we connect. So we love stories, don't we? And, you know, like, if you see someone you haven't seen in a while and like, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what happened, and you're like, ooh, leaning in. You know, we're emotional beings. We like to connect in that way. So brands are really no different. If you've got something that's really dry with no emotion in it and you can't really find a common ground with it, you're never going to be invested. And we want people to be invested in the brands that are here to do good, and storytelling is absolutely the way to do that.
Yeah, and like some of the biggest businesses today, because they have so much money, they can invest so heavily into their storytelling.
Yeah.
So they come across really good. Like, even like companies like, I mean, I don't want to throw shade on them too much, but I've got to admit, like, companies like Coca-Cola, like, realistically, like, they work with like the ocean cleanup, because we're looking at the ocean cleanup at the minute because we think they'd be like an amazing company.
Yeah.
But then it's also like Coca-Cola, as much as sustainable good they probably do, it's still like a drink which really isn't there's no need for it.
It's not benefiting anyone, is it? I say that, I've got a Diet Coke.
I know it's not. I started talking about Coca-Cola. I looked down, I see the Diet Coke, and I was like,
I got it from the cafe when I came on. I've had 3 matchas today. So do you know when you're like, I don't need any more hot drink fuel? I mean, I know matcha isn't like terrible for you, but I am feeling pretty, you know, woo. Right. Yeah, so I don't know what I hope a Diet Coke will do to me. But, you know, they're probably working in the ocean realm because they have to do something. It's not out of a desire. It's not like Surfers Against Sewage, is it? And it's like literally their whole reason for existence is to keep the ocean clean. you know, it's out of a, you know, an obligation rather than a desire. And I think that's the difference, isn't it? But yeah, companies that have got like literally unlimited marketing budgets, you know, yeah, they're always going to exist. I think like in the sort of energy sort of drink realm, a really good example is Tenzing. Am I saying that right? Tenzing?
Oh, my friend, right? He we were on a night out a few months ago, and as I was saying a minute ago, actually, I don't drink anymore. And he was like, "Right, mate, I want to get you a drink. I'm going to get you a Tenzing. Like, you're going to absolutely love it." He was banging on about this Tenzing. So we go walk around Sainsbury's local. We couldn't find one. I was gutted, but yeah, I've still yet to try it.
Oh my gosh, no, honestly, they're so good. But they've like completely revolutionised the energy drink space. So I'm sure I might be wrong. Oh, I don't know if my memory is failing me, but I feel like the founder, he did used to work at Red Bull.
Okay.
I think. Don't like, you know, if someone fact check me on that. But like they've completely disrupted that as an industry, and there's nothing rubbish in it at all. Like it's all like plant botanical sort of a natural high that you get from it, as opposed to some of the others that are literally just filled with Gould knows what. But that's an example of a brand that is still, it's a really small brand. They're like a lean team, but with the right storytelling and the right messaging and the right angle, they've been able to go in and literally like cause havoc in this industry. And I love that. I love it. Check him out. If you don't, check the founder out on LinkedIn. He's cool.
Yeah, I will do. That sounds really interesting.
Really cool.
So talking about like wreaking havoc in an industry, how do you think like a smaller company who's maybe starting up, but they want to enter like a market and they want to get across their message that they're doing good things, how do they go about doing that?
I think, and I'll come back to something that I said earlier, it's about the energy and intention behind it. If a brand is going in thinking, I want to tear shit up, you know, if that's the intention, that is the wrong thing to go in with. I think the whole like causing havoc and like really sort of disrupting an industry, that should be a byproduct of you doing something well and doing something for the right reasons. So I think that's where that whole purpose thing, the purpose, the mission, the vision and the values, that sort of brand truth element really comes into play, because I think we think with things like that, like, oh, what's your purpose statement, what's your mission statement? It's just stuff that is on a sheet of paper that you kind of look at, and you know, if you've got an office you might have it on the wall and it might look cool, and that'll probably be the end of it for a lot of companies. But that sort of collection of things should be the things that your brand lives and dies by. If your values aren't literally the thing that drives every business decision, they're literally pointless, you know. And if you've got values like, we're a family-run business, like, I love family-run businesses, no shade to family-run businesses, but people don't really care about things like that. People don't care. They care about what you're going to do for them. And that's why that sort of core foundational piece, and I love working with brands on that, because they might have a mission statement that was written 15 years ago by the founder in his bedroom when he started it, and now the business is very, very different. And that like collection of things is so important in shaping how you put your brand out there in the world, and the stories that you tell and the sort of words that you use and the things that you stand for as well. Like, you know, obviously in an ideal world we'd all do everything perfectly all of the time, and brands would as well, but that isn't realistic. It's about taking action that has the most meaningful impact and means a lot to your values and your brand values as well. So like the ocean cleanup stuff, for example, you know, that might be like a real big area of passion, and that might be where like sort of the charity days are focused, the volunteer hours, and you know, if you're doing like 1% for the planet or something like that, that might be like the area of focus. But it'd be very difficult to, I think brands probably are a bit in danger of spreading themselves too thinly to tick boxes. And it goes back to that intention. It's like, okay, you want to disrupt. Do you want to disrupt, or do you want to make the world a better place? Do you want to, like, perhaps you've chosen 3 SDGs, and that they're what you want to focus on. but it's like trying to focus on, there's a 17 of them, it's like trying to focus on all 17, and it's like you'll kill yourself and your entire team before you do any good in the world if you try and do that.
Yeah, such an interesting point. I was sort of thinking this a little bit earlier, like at the minute our company is sort of focusing on our strategy as a whole. We're thinking about, there's like 4 pillars. So we have like team well-being, team niche, team good things, and team diversity, equity and inclusion. And the team good things is mostly focused on, okay, how can we either have a positive impact on the environment or have a positive impact on local community, charities, that kind of thing. So we have all these meetings and we've got some good ideas and we're kind of working on quite a few things already. Like we've got things in progress. And then it's like B-Corp, and it's like that's kind of on the side at the moment, and we are going to come back to that and do it. But then it's kind of weird because in a sense it's a bit of a trade-off of time, because we are quite a small agency. It's like, what do you do? Like, do you focus on actually doing the things that's genuinely going to impact the charity right now or the environment, or do you go and try and prove that you're doing stuff that's going to impact the world? So
that's the thing, isn't it? And I think like actually taking action and like getting shit done. Sorry, I said knob once and like it's all gone to pot. You wouldn't think I did words, would you? But actually getting stuff done that's going to have a real impact, that is far more valuable than sort of a piece of paper that like says, we're a good business. Like it is about doing the things that matter, isn't it? And doing the things that matter to you as a brand, because again, people see that, people feel that. And having that sort of, it's like social proof, isn't it? Like, look at them doing exactly what they say they do, like exactly acting, you know, walking the walk as well as talking the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think like a brand goes about kind of unlocking those values and like connecting with them?
I think you have to get really, really honest. And I think having an outside perspective is really, really good. So whether it is with someone who does sort of brand truth, brand strategy, you know, whatever you want to call it, or maybe it is a marketing agency or whatever that entity is, having that outside opinion and outside voice to question it, I think is absolutely key, because said earlier, we're so self-centered, aren't we? And like, you might think that your values are like rock solid, but until somebody says, what does that actually mean? Like, you might know what it means. And, you know, I've got a client who I've worked with previously and we're exploring a bit more work together now. And the founder, he was like, can you have a look at like the values and like what we stand for and like the mission statement? And so often things are just word soup. That it's just like they've thrown some buzzwords in there and it's like an amalgamation of maybe like 3 different people in the business have gone like, yeah, we stand for that. Yeah, we stand for that. Yeah, we stand for that. And it's like, what does it mean? And like, I have a first-hand example of this, actually. I used to say that Everable works with impact-driven businesses. And I was like, oh, that feels so slick. Yes, yes. And then I was walking around Trentham Gardens and I was like, impact driven. It's like an impact driver. Like at the tool. I was like, what does that actually mean? Like, what does impact driven mean? Because, okay, you're driven by impact. That doesn't say whether that impact's good or bad. You know? And like, the same with purpose driven, really. I mean, I still use that phrase now, but, you know, or like passionate. It's like, you could be passionate about destroying the world. Like, it's like, what does that mean? So I think really breaking down the meanings of words. And you might come to a point where you're like, okay, impact driven, that does sit well with me. But for me, I was like an impact driver. Like, I'm all about energy. I'm all about the good stuff. I'm all about flow and ease and tapping into things like the physical things in the body. Impact doesn't feel like a nice word for me to use. But I think until we start questioning, like, what do these words mean? What is the intention behind these words? It's really easy just to slap 3 together, stick them on the wall and carry on with your day and never think about them ever again. Or until you get to like your, you know, end of year and you're like looking back and you're like, what were them values? You know, there's going to be a lot of brands out there that do that, and it's like, let's break it down, work out what we mean by it and what the intention is. And okay, do they still fit? If they do, great, yes, let's go. If not, maybe we rethink.
Yeah. Do you think you could like go and look at somebody's like mission statement? Like, let's say I'm like an agency and I'm like, okay, I want to get a bit better with words here. Could I just go and look at my own mission statement and start like analysing it in some detail and like in depth and go, okay, actually, what does that mean? And start questioning my own mission statement, or is there like a better way to start off approaching this?
Definitely. And I think like the more we can question things, the better. I would say if you have got a mission statement and you're thinking, could it be better? Have a little look over it. But then genuinely, the best thing you can do, get away from your desk, get away from a computer, turn your phone off, go for a little walk in nature and have a long, hard think and see what comes to you. I think if you're sitting down with the intention of like, God, I really need to sort this out, again, what feeling is there in the body there? You might be feeling a bit rushed, like, oh God, I just need to sort it, reluctant. And again, what energy is going to be poured into that thing that should be your mission statement? It should be like, you know, a shining little light coming out of your brand's head, if it had a head, you know, like, oh, here I am. So it's like, is it something that you want to like have your head in your hands over at your desk, or is it something that you want to allow a bit of spaciousness for?
Yeah.
You know, I know it's an absolute luxury. It is, it shouldn't be. But, you know, it can be a luxury to, you know, take the day and like go and have a wander, or like, so when I first start working with brands, whatever project we're working on, I work out which element feels most connected to them. So are they earth? Are they air? Are they fire? Are they water? Or are they ether? Are they the, you know, the overarching sort of feeling? And I think, like, again, if this feels woo, it feels woo for you, you know. But working out where you feel most connected, you know, do you like being in the forest? Do you like being by the sea? Do you like, you know, where do you feel most at home in nature? Like, as either, if you're the marketing manager, if you're the brand manager, if you're the founder, whoever you are, go and spend time there and seek inspiration for that mission outside of the usual places.
Yeah, because it's a bit like the answer already exists somewhere. It's just like,
yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. The answer is there somewhere. It's just unpicking it and drawing it back to that brand. And I think it's so tempting, isn't it, to like, you know, when you're thinking about mission statements, like, oh, let's go see what Patagonia's is. Because they're like the OG of mission statements. But it can just make it more confusing. And I think when we're seeking inspiration for things like that, always, if you absolutely must look at other brands outside your own industry, always, like, never, like, if you're like, say, a marketing agency, don't go and look at other marketing agencies, because it literally confuses you more than anything. But honestly, I get most inspired when I am in nature, at an art gallery, reading. Like, oh my gosh, reading brings me so much joy. And like, I don't read business books, I read novels and nice things and things that, you know, make me feel inspired. So yeah, like, get off your phones.
I love it.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, it is. In that last episode, actually, I was talking about me going on my phone too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so final question then. As the name of the podcast is Make Things Better, we do ask this question every podcast. What do you think people can do to make things better? And you can interpret this however you like.
Okay, what do I think people could do to make things better? I could say 100 things for this, but I'm going to say spend more time in and with nature. I think when we don't connect with, you know, Mother Earth, Mother Nature, Passion Mama, whatever you want to call that thing, her, when we're not spending time in nature, we become so disconnected from the impact that we're having on the planet, the, you know, the things that we're doing. And we're never going to be perfect, you know. I'm not sitting here saying that any of us are, but I think the longer we spend away, the bigger that gap becomes of knowing that actually it is a constant source of inspiration. It is something that needs support and help, and it's also our greatest resource. Like, what an absolute joy to live on such a gorgeous planet. Obviously there's horrendous things happening, but in terms of nature, how beautiful, and what an absolute honour. So if you do want to make things better, I think connecting with nature and finding out what that means for you, you know, it might be that, you know, you've got a balcony and you can start growing some herbs. That might be your connection. Like, particularly if you live in a city, I'm really lucky that, you know, I'm in Stoke, and like there's lots of like green space available. But, you know, it might be that, you know, you absolutely love cold water swimming and you go and find like a like a puddle. But, you know, some water that you can get in and sort of experience that. You know, there's 1,000,001 different ways of experiencing nature, and it's free as well. It's free to access, free to enjoy. And I think, I think just spending more time,
I just want to go out for like a walk now, like in the countryside.
Me too. But yeah.
Amazing. Okay. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm Molly Gould on LinkedIn. You'll know it's me. My headline says typing ... which catches a lot of people out, which I absolutely love. I'll never change that.
Confused me, because I'm sure you had that on Slack as well.
Yeah, I have. I've got it on any messaging platform.
Like, when is she going to reply?
What is she saying?
I'm so intrigued. I'm waiting like 10 hours.
What's this essay? Then my website is itiseffable.com, and on Instagram it is effable as well.
Perfect. Go and check out Molly. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've loved this so much.
Me too. All right, and thanks for listening or watching. You can find HiveIT at www.hiveit.co.uk, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.